Hello, another little update on my timer counter unit. I got a little more time to fidget with it and got next stage of firmware put into it, test firmware, and found a couple little typos in the code and found a couple wiring errors that I had to sort out. But most importantly, you'll see it's displaying a valid count, currently showing that the input frequency is running right at 2,326,000 or 329 hertz on the input, which means for the most part that most of my subroutines that I'm going to use for all the rest of the operating modes is pretty much completed. Things like timer management, the display subroutines to display both numbers and text, even though there's no text on screen right now, have been tested and fully functional. The BCD or hexadecimal to BCD conversion subroutine is functioning, and the absolute to relative count conversion subroutine is functional. So pretty much most of the primary subroutines that I'll be using for the rest of the operating modes is pretty much finished and fully functional. And the firmware in the unit currently, with all of the primary subroutines in place, display subroutine, hexadecimal to BCD, the absolute to relative count conversion, and everything else, is totaling in around 340 bytes. So it's not exactly approaching any state of bloat right now. So keeping it relatively nice and well trimmed piece of firmware. So while the counter in this operating mode currently has a maximum of a 32-bit hexadecimal count, which correlates to about 4 billion on the standard decimal count, which the number retrieved from the timer counter is two 16-bit hexadecimal counts put together, 32-bit hexadecimal, which converts to a 10-digit binary code decimal count. And you can see I still haven't got the phase lock loop section put in place, but I'll be leaving that till later. Next primary milestone, which will be a bit easier than what's come before, is getting a control input to the unit, because right now it's just running a single operating mode. But once I get a control circuit hooked to the microcontroller, some type of input circuit, then I can write out the control subroutine to allow me to select between different operating modes and select the values and settings for those different operating modes. So that's the next stage of this little project. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm over the primary hurdle in the project, which is getting the first relatively functional operating mode. Now it just comes to the stage of adding on to what is already approaching a relatively functional piece of equipment, or a piece of equipment that has actual operating functions. So on that note, take care, take it easy.